Hi everyone, welcome back to Woman's Splain. Today we have a very special guest. She is an expert content creator and incredible runner, Bénédicte King. I'm going to pass it over to her to give a little intro and then we're going to dive into her story.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be on the podcast today. So my name is Bénédicte and I am a runner, long distance runner, and a content creator as of very recently.
Amazing.
And I used to work in international development in strategic communication. So that's what I did for 6 years until I kind of went through a burnout and a life just changing season, which led me to explore a very different path of living. And I am here today still very much figuring it out, but enjoying the process as I do so.
Well, this is such a special episode because we met a few years ago,
Yeah.
coincidentally on the train. We're both going to Central Park.
What a New York story,
Right?
too.
Literally.
We love, like Subway,
I was-
Subway overheard.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. I was
know.
going to Central Park for a women's 10K, and I think you were just going, you
a
were
run,
visiting,
yeah.
going on a run. We instantly clicked. It's been great just kind of following along your journey, being a runner, running in the Olympics. We can talk about that later.
Yeah.
But I know you have a really cool international background. So I guess let's start from the beginning. Where are you from, and where did you grow up?
So my parents are both from Congo, so that's the Democratic Republic of Congo. However, I was born in Paris, in France. So I'm French and Congolese, but I actually spent a lot of my childhood in New York, which is why I speak English that way. Because a lot of people always ask me about my accent. And then also I went to like a British international school in Paris. And then I spent also quite a bit of time in East Asia in my early 20s, so like Japan, South Korea, and China. And as of the last 5 years, I've been living in Mexico City.
So how many languages do you speak?
I speak 5 languages.
Wow, and you do it so well.
That's amazing.
That's crazy.
That's amazing.
So then for college, what did you study?
So for college, I was studying in London. I focused on international politics and East Asian studies, actually, which is how I ended up basically going to school in Japan, South Korea, and China. It was a very, I don't want to say like random choice to go for East Asian studies.
Yeah,
but
I was going to ask, look, I totally get, like, you had a very international childhood. I'm sure you felt like you were exposed to so many different cultures.
Yeah.
Obviously, immigrant bridge of being in New York, Paris, and then obviously having your Congolese background.
Yeah.
But yeah, what drove you to East Asia? I mean, I feel like we got 4
Yeah,
continents
we
in
did.
that. I feel like we're bridging you over to the new continent. Like, I don't know.
And we also have Mexico City, so it's like
yeah.
all
all
ground.
So I think that pretty much if you ask me about any decision I've ever made in my life, I would say that once an opportunity comes, I'm very keen on taking it. Even
Love
if
that.
it doesn't always make sense in the moment, what kind of like bridges all these like very random decisions, destination, is the fact that I'm a very curious person. And I don't believe that like you should be limited in any capacity when it comes down to like interests or things that you believe you can do. So originally in my undergrad, I started off, with African studies because yes, I'm from Congo and I loved learning about Africa as a kid. Like my dad was really big on like teaching us the history of our continent to me and my siblings. And so I kind of like got to college thinking like, oh, I'm going to like just focus on that, right? But I already knew so much about it, honestly, that it just wasn't as stimulating as I thought. So then I got the opportunity to just like switch to a different like focus, and East Asia came as an option. I was like, it is so different from everything that I know. Like I don't know anything about Asia. And I think that is like, this is exactly what I should do. Like, this is exactly the path that I should take. The one that I'm like the least like knowledgeable about, because that's what college and university is about. At least for me, that's how I saw it. And then it gave me so many opportunities to travel. So I was just like, yeah, like that's a no-brainer.
No, that's awesome. And you studied international politics, you said?
Yes, I started international politics and economics. Yeah.
Got it. And so was the goal to work in like international development,
Yes.
like diplomat?
Yes, that was the goal, was always to end up at the UN/the World Bank, which is what I did.
Wow.
And fulfilling that dream was fulfilling until it wasn't. But I'm really glad that I, took that path, that I saw it through, because you don't know what you don't know. So I'm really happy that I was able to like explore it and actually make it happen, and then realize that, you know what, it's not for me. I'm saying this right now, and I feel very much at peace about it. But when I found out that the dream that I had spent, you know, more than 10 years studying towards wasn't actually the dream, I was devastated. It was like the end of my life, pretty much. And yeah, but it although it felt really difficult in the moment, I'm really glad that it happened, and I wouldn't have changed it. I wouldn't change it.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. I think that's something we hear a lot, and also we both experienced, is obviously you spend so many years thinking you know what you know.
Yeah.
And you also, and like you get to a point where you become disillusioned, and then you also have to grieve this life that you imagine for yourself. It almost feels like a breakup. It's like, you know, like so much of like, this is scientific or whatever, but like so much of the pain of a breakup is like this grief of loss of your future. And I feel like you like experience that when you have like literally a career breakup too.
Yeah.
So tell us about that more. So you feel really, you're grieving, you feel burned out, and
Yes.
like what is like burnout to you, and how did you kind of define that for yourself?
So I think that's a really great question. I think for me, burnout was doing something that I had neither interest or was learning from, yet still expected to work as hard towards. So you're still putting the same amount of energy as you would on any project. And in my case, it was like lots of very long hours, lots of really early meetings, like, you know, because you're working on so many different timelines, working in an international organization, you can have your first meeting at like 5 a.m., 6 a.m. throughout the week. It's very normal. And you can go working up till like 11 p.m., midnight. And so you're putting in these crazy hours, but I'm not intellectually stimulated. I'm not learning. And I feel like I'm almost losing, like, I'm like losing part of my like life in that situation, but I can't do anything because I worked towards this. I worked really hard for it. And so you don't really know what to do. So you're in this weird limbo, but because you're so exhausted, you can't actually take a step back. And you're just like constantly on the wheel, right?
Like you're just in survival mode. So
Yes,
exhausted.
exactly.
You can't think of what to do next.
Exactly.
And you also have this like sunk cost fallacy of like, this was my dream.
Yeah, I've invested this much already.
Yeah,
you
like
know?
I can't leave.
Exactly. So I think, that's what I would define burnout for me. But I didn't know what it was until like one day, you know, I'm in between meeting, right? Like back-to-back meeting. I have like maybe 5 minutes in between each meeting. And those 5 minutes are essentially me crying and relieving the pressure from the previous meeting, and then getting ready for the next meeting, and then crying again. And it's just like you start to normalize this until thankfully I had a really great mentor, and I told him about it, and he was like, that's not normal, you know? There is no reason why you should be going through this. Like, we're not doing open heart surgery here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
you know, so let's just like put things back into, you know, perspective, and like let's take a step back. And that in itself is something which really did like save my life, I would say, because if it wasn't for him, like, you know, presenting that to me in that way, I would have just thought that like I was the problem, or like I didn't have, you know, like the shoulders to handle the responsibilities that were granted to me.
I know, isn't that such a female fucking construct?
No.
Yeah,
I
men
know.
don't have to
I
deal with
think
that.
men
They're
don't
like, I'm
ever-
the best. I don't need to do this.
I don't like they would never blame themselves for
Yeah.
being in like a toxic environment. It's like actually
No.
wild the amount we put together. So do you think that was kind of your aha moment of like, I kind of have to do something else when mentor talking to you?
Sadly, yes, it was. But it took me like a long time to actually take actions towards it, I would say. And actually the true aha moment, and that's like a really crazy story that I haven't told that many people, but one day I woke up and my mouth was bleeding.
Oh
So
my God.
yeah, I like woke up and like my mouth was like full of blood. And so I went to like, you know, dentist, ENR, and the dentist checked my mouth in less than like 10 seconds. She was like, are you stressed?
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I am. Like, how do you know that? Like, how could you just tell by like, you know, look at my mouth? She's like, well, this is a very like common symptom of, you know, people who go through like very high like stress period. As like, she's a doctor. She's like, she saw a lot of like med students, for instance, who like go through that, where basically like you can get like what's it called, like
inflamed, like gums.
inflamed
Yeah.
gums, exactly, as a result of like stress and just basically your body going into overdrive mode. And that's what was happening to me. And so that happened first, and then I kept getting back-to-back stomach infections.
Oh my God.
And yeah, then I went to see a gastroenterologist. Same thing. She also asked me, are you stressed by any chance? And so accumulation of those two things happening, like two different, practitioners asking me about like my work-life balance, which was clearly non-existent, truly was the aha moment, or more so just the like, I just can't do this anymore moment. And it was really sad though, because it took for my work to impact my physical health to then grant myself permission to quit. That was when I drew the line. I was like, okay, now this is affecting me physically. Now I'm like, it's valid for me to like decide to let go of this job, but it shouldn't have to like go all the way there.
Yeah.
I wish I hadn't, had to wait until then, but I just couldn't give myself permission before that,
Yeah, that's like your last resort. Your
Yes.
body's like, okay, this is it. It's
Yeah,
time
I
to
feel like
break.
I needed like a valid excuse,
Yeah.
and I don't know how it is in the US, but like in France, unless like if you want to get like a doctor's note or whatever, like mental health is just not a valid factor, or at least growing up that's how it was. And so I just kind of always had in my mind that unless I'm like physically ill, then only then can I actually ask to be excused from like work, school, or whatever. I think I just carried on that mindset, like
Very
yeah.
immigrant mindset too. I think that's
Very,
really common,
yeah.
of just kind of like suck it up and keep working hard.
Yeah.
Like, like stress isn't real.
Yeah.
Mental health
Oh my
isn't
God, yeah.
real.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just get over it.
Get over it.
You know,
Yes.
whatever. Or like,
Yeah.
stop being in your feelings.
Exactly.
And honestly, our generations, the first generation, really changed around that.
Yeah.
And I think also just realizing there's so much connection between stress and physical.
Absolutely.
And like, there's such a mind-body connection. So many things start with stress.
Yeah.
So obviously you experienced that. So I'm glad that you're
Sadly, I did.
Yeah. A blessing in disguise, I guess.
Yeah,
So
no,
then you're
it
like,
was. It
all
really
right,
was.
gotta get out.
Like,
Yeah.
sometimes you need a wake-up call.
Yeah.
right?
It really was. And I think I
Yeah.
was just too stubborn to like have made that decision otherwise. Like it just I wouldn't have made that decision if it didn't get to that point. And
Yeah.
thankfully now I have learned my lesson and I don't let it get to that point. But like I think for many of us, we just don't know any better. So, or we're just really stubborn.
So did you like just quit? Were you kind of thinking, what should I do next? I guess you're kind of like flight or fight mode. So you're like, all right, gotta get out.
No, like then I quit. I like put in my resignation just like immediately. I was like, I'm out. I can't do this anymore. So it just like took about 2 weeks to come into effect. But then I was like, okay, what am I gonna do? And I was just going through another type of like stress, right? Of like figuring out not just how I was gonna be able to afford my life, but also what career I was going to take on, or if this was still something that I wanted to do. I'm someone who associated a lot of like my self-worth as an individual to my achievements, and my job title was of course a big part of that. And so now I'm found in this situation where I have to like suddenly reevaluate all of those things. So I kind of like put in a plan in place where I was like, okay, I'm just going to give myself, I don't know, like 6 months, 8 months or whatever, however much I could afford, right? To take a break first and then figure out if I wanted to like go back to the same organization, stay within that field, or do something completely different. And that was the plan. However, the reality was that I was so tired. Honestly,
Yeah.
I was so tired. So all the planning went, out of the window because I was honestly just trying to recuperate. Like, so I found myself sleeping like 10, 12 hours each night for like, honestly, 2 months. And I couldn't understand why, but it was, because my body needed it. And at the same time, I was starting to run a lot more. And it was really interesting because running had always been part of my life. I've been running since I was like, I don't know, like 7 years old or something like that. But it was something that was so second nature to me that I never took it as a passion. It was never a thing. I don't know if that makes sense. It was just kind of like the
Your
same
hobby.
way.
Like you're just
I
doing
wouldn't
it.
even consider it a hobby. It was just like a necessity to my life, the same way you need to brush your teeth. So I just never made it a thing. Like if somebody were to ask me to list my hobbies, for instance, running wouldn't have been part of that list. However, I did run like 4 or 5 times a week. But
Like, it felt like breathing.
yeah, it just felt like a thing. And then as I'm going through this really difficult moment in my life, I find myself going on those runs for relief. And that's when it just kind of like clicked, where I was like, oh, like this actually is what it's like to like, yeah, like have a passion. It's so second nature to you that you don't even realize it. Because other people would ask me like, how do you manage like run, always make like time for running? And to me, it's not a question. Like there is just no, like whether I am going to do it or not, it's how am I going to make it happen? Even if I have a really busy day, where can I fit in a 30, even 10-minute run sometime, like whatever it takes. And so you just kind of like stop questioning those things, because life, I don't know about you guys, but like in society, I always feel like they make it seem that your passion or your purpose is this really like complicated thing that you can only get after doing this very lengthy pursuit of the self, or like going on this like really long like healing journey or whatnot. And I did buy into that for a while, but as I am now realizing, coming home to myself was actually much more easier than what I thought or what the self-development books told me.
Yeah.
So
No, I think that's super important. I feel like, yeah, like everyone's like, go on a healing journey, go to Thailand, find yourself. But if yourself was always with you, like you don't need to do some sort of, journey to find yourself and what you like. So you like running. Did you ever feel like, oh, maybe I can do this professionally? Or was it more of like I want to do it as a hobby and like document it and become more of like the content creator?
No, I never set out to become a content creator, honestly. Never.
Yeah.
I did want to run professionally when I was a kid. So I used to do track, and that was what, if you had asked me as a kid, like what would I like to do later on, I would have told you like become a professional athlete.
Oh, wow.
However, school took over and there was very little balance, because I don't know if you guys are like kind of aware of like how the school system works in France, but it's very time consuming. I mean, you're in school from like 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's crazy. It's like a lot of hours.
Okay, so like you do your homework there and you do like, like stuff
not
like
even.
that?
You still have homework at home. You go to school on Saturday morning. Like it's a lot. And so it doesn't really leave much time for like sports, unless you can get into like sport athlete program, but I didn't get into one because I was going to an international school, so that doesn't involve that. So it was this thing where I just chose like my studies. But I always had... There's not like
sports teams, like the U.S.
No.
Okay, interesting. Okay, I mean, I didn't know that. So
like that in Korea,
there's not like a thing... Basically, academics only in school. There's not like a lot of extracurriculars going on.
Well, you do, but it wouldn't be able to like... You wouldn't be able to do it like... Let's say here in the U.S. you have like the NCAA kind of thing. Yeah, you wouldn't really be able to do that.
Okay, so basically if you're a serious student, you can't be an athlete.
Yeah, no. It's very... Sense. You do have like student athlete programs, but it's not, it definitely does not like prioritize
like
academics. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That makes sense.
So I chose studies and it was fine, but I think it was a dream that I always kind of like nursed and like kind of like had to grieve in my heart that I would never become a professional athlete, because I mean by that point I'm like whatever, 20, 25, that's just never happening, right? But then when I started running longer distances, because I used to do track, and then I think at best the most I would do would be like a 5K, but then as I started running more and more, got into long distance and got into marathon training and joined a running team in Mexico that were kind of like semi-pros, like they're amateurs but they train like professionals, so and they have times that compare to like professionals in certain cases. I was introduced to a middle ground whereby these people had, regular 9 to 5, but they woke up at like 4:30 a.m. to train at 5:30 every single day, 6 times out of 7 in the week. And their dedication and their passion for the sport was as strong as professional athlete, minus the fact that they don't actually make money out of that, right? And so I kind of like found a way to live the dream that 8-year-old me would have liked to pursue in a way that I didn't even know was possible. Because as I started training for like marathon, then I started documenting my journey online, and as I started documenting my journey online, I kind of like found myself falling into the realm of content creation and becoming a content creator. That I never set out to be one. It was just very much like I just want to see my progress, and so I'm going to document it. And I love videos, I like writing, and that just felt like a very natural medium for me to partake in. But then just opportunities started coming my way, and I was able to start making a humble but a living out of that. And then I was like, I'm not a professional athlete. However, I do get paid to run. Like that's it's a very interesting medium, and then I get paid to attend races, like
So cool.
or like I get my entrance fees and everything covered, like I just did right now for the half marathon in New York last weekend. And that's something which I never even thought was possible. Like I don't think anyone knew that like 5 years ago that this was
An
option, right? It is today, and it's pretty wonderful that I get to partake in that. So yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I mean, I love your story so much. And I think one of my
thank you.
favorite things too is obviously you did this crazy unique thing where I feel like you're like, I had to seek the most opposite thing ever to study, and I had to find the most difficult thing ever to create. And like, that's what my passion and destiny was. And then instead you kind of ended up happier, something that you loved doing since you were a kid.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's such a good, like, I don't know, it's a really good sentiment for young people. It's just like, sometimes you don't need to be like that crazy and seek this crazy
Honestly,
thing.
yes.
Maybe instead you should be like looking for things that just feel really natural to you. It's going to make you a lot
Absolutely.
happier.
Absolutely.
Right? And I feel like it's kind of the opposite of our societal like messaging.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of a crazy thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of a crazy thing. So I love that. So now you are literally, I'm going to call you a professional athlete. I mean, we call like, right? I mean, I certainly
You
don't
are,
get
for
paid to do
sure.
anything athletic.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't
know.
either,
I mean, I
certainly.
feel like influencers call themselves models, right? It's the same thing.
Fair.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I think we own it. So
I'll
like
take
now
it.
you literally paid to run, you live in Mexico City.
Yes.
So what made you land there? It's another new place.
Oh my God. So before I lived in Mexico City, I was living in Beijing, and I did 2 master's degree. Again, another
Wow.
just very, I did, so I was doing my second master's in Beijing, and then I started working, and I was actually, at the time I was working for like a nuclear energy company.
Whoa.
Very, again, just like a lot.
Hey, we got like a
I know, it's
yeah,
just
we
so
got some
interesting.
twists and turns
There's a
going
lot.
over here. Also, what are your masters in? Can you tell? You two? Okay.
Yeah. So my first master's is in international development and
Okay.
economics.
Cool.
And my second master's is in sustainable development and Chinese studies. I did start a third master's, which was just in Chinese studies. However, it got to a point where I was like, all right, you need to start working, girl. It's been like, it's just ridiculous.
And
we're
this was
gonna-
after
speak
you
Mandarin?
quit.
No, this was
This was
before. This was
before.
before. Yeah,
Okay.
because like I did, I went from undergrad to master's and then
Okay,
master's,
got
and
it.
then when I started the third one, I was living in China, and I was like, okay, I got the opportunity to get into this program, and it was great, but then I just really wanted to get on some hands-on experience. So then I got into this French nuclear energy company, and I started working there. However, the work-life balance as well just wasn't there in China. Things can be very intense, like at a professional level, like you work from like 9 a.m., 9 p.m. type thing. And also I just wasn't satisfied, but it was an opportunity that I was given. And again, like I said, so much of what I've done, anything that I've done in my life, in my career, was just me going after opportunities, which is why it seems just, again, like went from, this to that, to this to that, right? And that's pretty much why.
It's a great attitude.
Yeah,
Hey.
honestly, like no regret.
Yeah.
But so I was living in Beijing, and after just figuring out that this wasn't for me, I needed a break. So I actually took it was going to be a 3 months trip, but it ended up being like a 1.5 year backpacking trip around the world. And I went to like a few different places. Like I went to Indonesia, I went to Ghana, I went to, I don't even know, like Switzerland. I just like was kind of like roaming around, if I'm honest.
awesome.
Yeah, it was really great. And because it was the first time that I had this much time to just like travel for fun, because I have traveled a lot, but a lot of it was like school or work related, and up until that point I just really needed a break. And I had a friend who invited me over to Mexico just to like visit, and also go to like this really cool surf town called Puerto Escondido. And at the time I was really into surfing, so I thought, okay, cool, that'd be great. I got to Mexico City, and I didn't expect anything, honestly, of Mexico City, because I've only heard, I had up until that point, like didn't hear very great things. And that now Mexico City is super hot, but that was like 5 years ago where it wasn't. And I was just amazed by how beautiful the city was. I was like insanely just like, I don't know, everything just looked so bright and like lush and vibrant, and I felt instantly at home. And I just had this strong gut feeling that this was going to be my home, and it ended up being my home for 5 years. And yeah, pretty much it's a very simple story. I got there, I really liked it, and then I got a job, and then I moved. I mean, it was like literally it.
I mean, it's an incredible place. Like, I
Yeah.
would also, the first time I went, I was like, I want to move here. And
Yeah.
like, I love New York. So that's like the only place I'd be like, all right, I'm okay with living.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think a lot of people have like that sentiment when they get there, because it's a very welcoming city, you know, in many ways. And even like more so, like, you know, the more time you spend there, especially if you're able to like learn the language, like delve into the culture, it makes such a big difference, because then you get to meet local people, you get to understand the culture, the customs, and even you as a foreigner, how you can even contribute to those things, because I do believe it's like really important. Like, having lived in different places, and I'm just so used to being a foreigner, and a foreigner that stands out quite a lot. But I do take a particular point in making sure that like I can like, yeah, speak the language, but also like truly get an understanding of like what people's life is like day to day, and how I can, yeah, contribute in whatever capacity that I can to the local culture, local economy, like whatever. I think that's when like my background in international development and economics takes place.
Yeah, it wasn't for nothing. You definitely use it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's so what does your day look like right now in Mexico City as a content creator, runner,
Athlete.
athlete?
Well, actually, right now I'm back in Paris,
Okay.
because I'm spending some time with my family, so I've been back for a few months. But I would say that currently I am actually spending a lot of time working on my career pivot, because, okay, so I did become a content creator, but like I said, I didn't plan on doing that. And it's still not the plan for me to be a full-time content creator. I still want to put like my skills to good use. And I actually just hired a career wellness coach, which I had never heard of before.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys like ever heard about
What is
it.
a career wellness coach? I know
So-
what a career coach is and
Yeah.
a wellness coach.
So it's a career coach, but that has like a huge emphasis on figuring out like, you know, your career path, pivot, entrepreneurial journey from a space of like, you know, well-being, from a calm nervous system, and from a place of like abundance and excitement, as opposed to like, you know, kind of like being really burnt out and just like very like worried or unaware. So there's like this huge emphasis on like the mental wellness part. There's a huge emphasis on the confidence part as well, because I think when you do go through like career changes and like, you know, dissociating from a career that was part of like your identity for a very long time, it can make you lose a lot of confidence. And so that part is something that's not often talked about. And so the coach that I work with really puts like a big emphasis on that. And I feel like I just resonated with her like in that respect a lot. So that's why I was like, ooh, this is really cool, really interesting. So I actually spent about a couple of hours in the morning working on that, because there is she gives me like a lot of homework to do. It's really cool. It's like a lot of like exploratory exercises, like some meditation, that kind of thing. It's really cool. So once I do that, I also do like some journaling, Bible study, because my faith is like really important. It's truly what keeps me like grounded. And then I go running usually, and after that go to the gym. And then the afternoon, depending if I have like just any events or whatever, that's what I'll attend. But other than that, I do spend like a lot of time doing clients work as well, because I do a lot of voiceover works
Really?
as part. Yeah, it's very interesting, because that's also something, again, an opportunity that came and I took it. And I found that I really like writing. I like writing scripts, and I do like doing voiceovers, not just for me. I mean, in my content, I do like it, but I also like doing it for other people. And so I kind of like got the opportunity as like just like my business to do that. So I spend a lot of time doing that as
Like
well.
translating, I'm assuming, because you speak so many languages, or?
Yeah, I do them right now mostly in English and in Spanish.
Cool.
because a lot of my clients are in Mexico for that, and then some in the US. Cool. So I spend a lot of time doing that, and then just like spend time right now since I'm in Paris. I get to spend a lot of time with my mom, my dad, my siblings, which is nice because I usually never see them. And having that time now that I'm in between career and whatnot gives me the time to be able to like go home and spend time with them. So it's very lovely.
That's nice to spend some time, especially as someone that you probably like lived away from family for so long, right?
Oh
like,
my God,
I'm
12 years.
I need to go home.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
right?
we always talk about that.
It's a long flight.
It's a long
you
flight.
As well.
Exactly. But in talking a little bit more about your running career, I was super excited to follow your whole journey. I know you ran in the Paris Olympics marathon.
That was crazy.
Talk about that. I watched your YouTube video. It was like, I feel like I was there because I was like watching you open the thing and it was so emotional. Like that must have been such a surreal experience.
It was so surreal.
What was that like?
It was so crazy. It was, honestly, I would say that like on my deathbed, it's going to be one of those things that I'm going to have like a flashback of, it sounds kind of creepy saying that, but I really mean it.
So cool.
Yeah, it really was. Because I mean, the chances of me like getting in were, I don't know what they were, but they were, very slight. And so being able to get in and knowing that I'd be running in Paris, which is my hometown. So like my parents would be there, my friends would be there. It just was it just felt like serendipity. Like everything just came all at once. It was also one of the most fantastic training block that I had. The race itself didn't go to plan, and I'll like talk about that in a minute, but just the training and the preparation towards it was so good. And that's something which I really, really love about running, is that the process in itself is even more fulfilling than the result. And like, a race day, I would say is like the celebration of all your hard work. And if you're able to truly delve into the process and give yourself to it, you will be able to learn so much about yourself, who you are as a person. And I feel like it's truly one of those like training block that changed me as a human, because I found that I got to like new levels of like dedication, commitment, discipline that I didn't even know I could, achieve. And so that just was really special. Now, the race in itself, getting to Paris during the Olympics was insane. It was so good. Like the whole city was like alive with just excitement and just like, just really great energy. The race was at night, which was even more special because then every single monument was just lit up. The Eiffel Tower was lit up. So we ran from Hôtel de Ville, which is like in the center of the city, all the way to Versailles, and then back.
That's amazing.
And that just was insane. Like that was just so crazy. And every single kilometer of the course was filled to the brim with people cheering and screaming and yelling. And like, again, because there were so many friends that came to see me, I could see, people that I knew and love every like 5K. And that just was so special, because usually when I run, I've never actually raced in Paris before. So it was like my first time being at home racing, and it just was incredible. And I think the part which I have stuck in my memory is that at kilometer 35, right under the Eiffel Tower, my mom and my siblings were there. And I think I was about like 200 or 300 meters away from them. I couldn't see them, but I could hear them amidst the crowd. They were so loud. But it was just so special because I just could hear them like scream for me, and then I saw them and like I ran towards them for like the best hug of my life, like literally. And just that memory in itself made all of the training worth it, because you work like for something specific in a race, whether it's like a time goal or like whatever. And I feel like I really trained for that moment alone, and that just was so special. Now the race in itself sadly did not go so well for me. I got my periods at mile 8.
Oh, no.
With like 20 or like something mile left.
Yeah, these are things we have to think about as female.
Yeah. Oh my
as
God.
women, no, running as a woman is a whole other like ball game. Yeah, these are things that are so real and that I'm really like, bullish on talking about, because this is our reality. And if you want to get like into the sport in whatever capacity, then I don't want people to feel like these are barriers. They're not. We just have to deal with them differently. That's it.
Yeah, and
But
even just the hormonal changes too.
Yeah.
Like different points in your cycle, you're feeling so different.
Exactly.
It could be like slower or faster, etc.
Exactly.
It is like wild. It's hard to be a woman.
It really it is. However, I do believe that we just need to be better at like knowing our own bodies.
Yeah.
And ultimately I find that to be a privilege in itself, that you get to know yourself so well that you can you know whenever something is off, or like you're just so attuned to those things. And that's a huge, I think, advantage actually of being a woman in the end. Well, at least now that's how I see it. I didn't see it so much that way when I started running.
So at mile 8, you're like, oh
beautiful.
shit.
Yes.
What do I do? Like,
Yeah, no, for real.
like, I gotta keep going. Like, what the fuck?
Oh
do I
yeah,
do?
no, you keep going.
Yeah.
You keep going. Like, I stopped by the medical tent. I asked them for a paracetamol. It was so funny because I had to stop twice. Again, just being a woman.
I mean, how many hours, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like fucking
So, because
crazy.
like the first tent, the doctor that was there was a man, and he just would not give me like a paracetamol because he's like, you're not supposed to have that. Well, because as a runner, it's true, if you take certain medicine, it may hinder either like your performance, or it can be dangerous.
Okay.
But if it depends which type of medicine, and I think he just didn't understand. So I told him I have my periods, like I need something, and he was like, no, I'm just not gonna give you anything. I'm like, no. So I went to another tent, and thankfully it was a female doctor, and she just knew exactly what to give me right away. So again, it's this thing where it's like, that's why we need like female representation in the sport. And that's why personally I'm so big on having like female doctors, like coaches, nutritionists, PT, whatever, because it makes a massive difference. Like you don't have to explain yourself. Like they'll just know what to do. So but yeah, you keep going though. Like I kept going. I just you make it through, and it's hard, but I feel like these are like things that are very much character building, because you don't know what you're made of until you go through things like this, like running a marathon on your periods, or like the marathon, like I think the marathon I ran before that, I got food poisoning the day, but like
Oh my
I remember
God.
that.
yeah, no, that was
Oh my god.
so
You
yeah.
still ran it.
I ran
Chicago.
it. Yeah, I ran Chicago.
I was like,
with
oh
food
my
poisoning.
gosh.
Were
Couldn't
you
be
throwing up
me.
during it?
Thankfully, I wasn't, but
you
I
felt
was
like
very
shit,
much
right? Like
yeah.
you literally emptied every
Yes.
electrolyte
You
in
also-
your body.
yeah,
That
couldn't
can't even be good for you.
carb
I mean, I don't
No,
even...
like I got like 2 IVs before.
Okay.
Like
But
like
still,
2
though.
bags of No, it was terrible, and I do not recommend
Afterwards,
anyone
you
doing this, by the
completely
way.
died. You must have like been completely
Oh
dead
yeah, I
after,
was sick
right?
for 2 months after, because then I got like a bronchitis, because
Oh
like
my God.
already when you're running a marathon, your immune system like completely shuts down, right?
Yeah.
So you're most likely to get sick.
for sure.
Now with food poisoning added on top of that, like my body was just like up and open for any illness that was going to come through.
Yeah.
So that's why I say I actually would not do this ever
Yeah.
again. But you just don't know what you don't know, right?
It's true. And it is the type of thing. I mean, you spend so many weeks, months training for a
Exactly.
marathon.
Yeah.
You sacrifice your life, like
Yeah.
literally. And I get like that mindset of just like, I'm gonna do it. Like I'm
Yeah.
not gonna let this stop me,
Yeah.
right? Even though it may not be the best thing for your body.
Not at all.
But like, hey, like
We've survived.
You
Yeah.
recovered. You learned not to do that again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, that's something.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think like a lot of people always ask me in running, like, when do you know when you're doing too much, or like when you should push yourself? And the answer is that you actually need to learn through experience. There's certain things, I mean, certain things, of course, you can kind of like find a way to measure, but there's things that you can only learn through going like an episode like I did, like with the marathon, like, food poisoning and running a marathon. Never doing that again.
Same thing for me. Like the first time I ran New York, I wasn't carb loading at all. I was like, I don't need carbs. Like I can do it. I know it's crazy.
What did you fuel on?
And then I wasn't even like, I didn't have gels. Like maybe I had like
wow.
2 goos like during
Yeah.
the race. It was just like, I was not well.
Yeah.
And then I was like unwell for like months. And I was like, I'm never doing this again. Obviously did it again. Learned from my mistakes. Did the whole training program. Was inspired by you. And I was like, okay, I actually have to like put in the work if you want to get the results. And the second time around was just so much better.
Oh, good.
And so like, yeah, just like listening to your body, like just consuming all the information of people that have gone through it. And people like you who are creating content was super inspiring. And yeah, I downloaded Run Up because of you.
Yay.
which is this great app. Tell me about your work with them. I know you have a partnership.
I do, yes. So Rana is basically an like AI training coach app,
cool.
which is really good. I think one of the reasons why I really like them is because they make access to coaching for runners affordable. Honestly, I think that's like one of the main thing, because a running coach can be very expensive.
Yeah.
Not everyone can afford that. But I think it shouldn't be a barrier for people to like train and train properly, like at least have access to like structured training, especially when they begin their running journey and they don't like, you know, have access to like whatever, or like all the knowledge, right? That like, for instance, you said, Sola, that you didn't know about like, you know, the different like type of like carb loading you're supposed to do, or like even the different types of run there are. So I find that like making that knowledge accessible to people is super important. I was really fortunate because like as soon as I started running, I've always had coaches, I always had nutritionists, I always had like PTs, entire team of people that can like help me do this sport in the best and healthiest way possible. But not everyone has that, and I think that Rana has a really cool mission, and they're really trying to like fill this gap in the market where there wasn't apps that were as extensive in their knowledge and as affordable and accessible. And so working with them now, it's been about 6 months, and it's been really, really fun, honestly, because you know, being able to do workouts and races with other runners, a lot of them being content creators as well, is really cool. Because when you're a content creator, it can be very isolating because you're by yourself, essentially. It's just you and your camera most of the time. And also, and even if you do have like friends that you're running with and whatnot, they don't necessarily get what it is like to be running and creating content at the same time. And sometimes you might feel a little bit self-conscious asking, you know, your friend to be like, hey, can you like film me while we're running? Or you don't really want to pull up your camera when you're with people. But that group, they get it, like, you know, the group of like other run ambassadors. And so there is just like this kind of like kinship, right? Like that's really, really cool. And so I think they've put like together a really cool group of runners. And I love when we come together, like, you know, for the New York City half marathon weekend, we have like all different events, and then we go out to eat. So it's a really cool time to just kind of like come together and just like, yeah, like celebrate our love for running. So yeah,
I think it's such a cool sport.
It really
It's awesome.
is.
It's such a community, I will say, with runners. I think I have incredible community and
Yeah.
support. What would you tell someone who wants to start running, who's like never run before?
Oof. I mean, from a technical perspective, from a mental.
Yeah, anything. I don't know. Like someone who's like, look, I would love to start running. I'm out of shape. Maybe I haven't done it in a long time. I'm scared. What would you tell them?
I'd say don't think into it too much, because running ultimately is like one of the most natural form of movement for humans, right?
Not for me. But yeah, for sure. I'm definitely not for me. I'm certainly,
Brooke's like,
yeah, no.
how can I get influenced to run?
No. But for someone other than me, literally, I don't think anyone wants to see that. I think there are lots of people who are inspired by your journey, right? And you're a content creator, like, feel like you are like most of the people you probably target are like normal people, right?
Yeah.
They're not athletes. They're normal people with 9 to 5s, right?
Okay, I would say from a just like very technical perspective, actually the easiest way is just to start doing like run and walk.
Okay.
Because I think people have this misconception when it comes down to running, that you need to be running fast, like, you know, at full speed, like being, you know, like out of breath the whole time. Whereas it can actually be a very enjoyable experience. So start slow, like very progressively, like, you know, do like, I don't know, 30-second walk, 30-second run interval, and set yourself with a goal, whether it's like running for like 1 minute straight, or like 5 kilometers straight, or I don't know, 10 minutes, whatever it is. And, you know, work toward that goal very progressively, because you want it to be sustainable. Like, you know, I think that's like something that we forget about the sport. Well, for me personally, I try to remind myself that like I'm trying to do this till like I'm 90 years old. Like, I really, really would love to be running half marathons when I'm like 85 or whatever. That's my goal.
My fiance's grandmother is 80.
Goals.
And has run 100 half marathons. Yeah, and she
Oh my
stopped
God.
running marathons like 5 years ago because she would like
Yeah.
couldn't anymore. But she literally, it's actually so funny because like they do, you know, like when you're winner or whatever, it's by age group.
Yes.
So she literally wins every single one because
was
80, and so
her competition.
and it's like literally, it's just like her running in the over 80 category, like vibing, and like it's just Dorothy like vibing,
gosh,
and it's
wow.
actually amazing. But yeah, so that can absolutely be you.
Yeah, that's my goal. So yeah, so just like start slow so that you
Yeah.
can like keep going and be sustainable.
That's
about it.
awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. This has been such an amazing. I'm so inspired by you, Benedict. You have such an incredible, unique journey.
Thank
What would
you.
you tell someone that sort of was in your position? I don't know, a few years ago, where you were so burnt out and scared. What would you tell someone in that position, or tell yourself in that position?
Take a step and the path will appear. I think that's something which I wish somebody had told me, because when you're so burnt out, you just don't see anything.
Yeah.
And you wish that you could see an entire path appear before you, or like have a guide, right, on how to figure out this pivot or this path that no one has walked before, like especially if you're trying to do something different. And that's very scary and very overwhelming, because meanwhile all your friends are just, you know, have very straightforward careers and life path. You're doing something really different. And so it can be very discouraging. So, but it doesn't have to be. So if you just take one small step at a time, eventually like the path will like find itself becoming clearer and clearer and clearer. And I wish somebody had told me this, like, you know, just like 2 years ago, even 6 months ago, honestly.
Yeah, never too late. Wow. It was so nice to see you again.
Oh,
thank you so much for
having
coming.
me.
Where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Bénédicte King. So that's Bénédicte with an E at the end, because I'm French. And yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you everyone for listening. Please reach out to us at womansplainpod1@gmail.com and follow us womansplainpod, and also follow Benedict. And thank you so much for sharing your journey.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks so much.
Yay.